Hi, everyone. Welcome to this new edition of Table 21. I'm Christopher Wells, your host. I hope that you are doing well today as our world seems to be going back to some kind of normalcy. So I'm hoping it is for me. It feels better and better, and I hope it is for you as well. I'm very excited again for the guest that's coming on today. Tom Fricke is the CEO at Bar Louie, a chain of he can correct me, but over 70 restaurants. And very excited to hear he's a experienced leader in many fields, but also in hospitality in the last 10 years, but he's worked in others. So I like that different perspective that he'll bring. So I'm very excited to have him on today. And without any further ado, hi, Tom. How are you?
Hey, Christopher, how are you?
I'm very, very good and very grateful that you're taking the time to come and talk with us and talk to our community. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. And I will correct you. They're gastrobars, not restaurants.
They're gastrobars. I'm sorry.
We can get into that.
That's perfect. I love that. And I want you to explain to us the difference for sure.
No, that's great. Looking forward to it.
Before we get going, I find a lot of times business podcasts are going to jump into the nitty gritty and then get into the big questions and the business stuff. But I want to know about Tom. I don't know you, and I want to learn a bit more about you. So I want to play a little game with you called This or That.
Okay.
That usually gives us a good idea, and in 5 minutes we get to learn about people. So I'm curious to know, are you an early riser or more of a night owl?
I'm an early riser, but I'm extremely grumpy when I do. It takes me a while to warm up.
Yeah. I guess you've been in leadership roles, so in C-suite roles for a long time. So I mean, that means you need to be business starts early, and you need to be going, which is weird because I'm more of the night owl because I've been in the restaurant business for 30 years. So
well, yeah, and what I like is those first couple hours, particularly if you get in the office early, it's some of the only uninterrupted time you have. So I do like to kind of get in there, get a couple hours of solitude before.
Well, many leaders say, and I know that I have young kids, I'm starting to realize that, but these people say they'll get more done from 6 to 8, 6 to 9 than they might do from 9 to 4 or 5 because there's no interruption and they can plow through so much work, right?
Well, yeah, and the other thing, because I have 3 kids. When the kids were young, I wanted to be done with work, so at night I had time with them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are you more when it's time to work out or try to stay healthy? Are you more a jogging guy or a gym guy?
Rower,
nice.
Rower, yeah. I do a lot of rowing.
That'll keep you in shape for sure. That's not an easy.
Hardest sport I ever did.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it, but until you do it, and I've never done it in a boat, but I've done it, on a rower in a gym, and it'll pump the blood there for sure.
Oh yeah, it definitely gets you going.
Are you more burgers or tacos?
Burgers.
Burgers. Huh? You guys have some really amazing burgers too, from what I've seen. In the gastro pub.
Yeah, exactly. Gastrobar, you almost got it.
Gastrobar. I'll learn it. I'll tell you before the end of this. I'll nail it. Are you more in Netflix or YouTube?
Netflix.
Chips or ice cream?
Chips.
Nice. Beach or mountain?
It's the lesser of two evils. Plus, I worked at Frito-Lay for 12 years. So
you got some good connections for some good chips for sure.
You had to be into chips. Yeah. Exactly.
Beach or mountain?
Beach. Well, I love both equally. How's that?
Yeah. I mean, the rowing was not necessarily on the beach as much as on the river, I'm guessing. But
well, I'm an old Navy guy. So, anytime you look at water is fun. Yeah. But I do like them. I do like the mountains.
Yeah. Are you more tea or coffee?
Coffee.
You need that fuel, especially in the morning, right? Especially if you're grumpy.
Absolutely. Well, and it's funny, when we were sick as kids, my mother would give us either tea or ginger ale, and so as a result, I can't drink either now because it just brings back all those unpleasant
bad memories
of being sick. Yeah. So I'm very much a coffee guy.
My sister bought me this cute Tigger mug because I'm a little bouncy and a little over the top, but I bought a similar mug for my wife, my girlfriend, and she can be she's a lot better now that we have kids, but she used to be famous for being grumpy in the morning too. So it says more coffee, less talky early in the morning.
Yeah, that's sort of my approach to life as well.
I like it. Thank you for answering those and giving us a bit of context into Tom. obviously you said it, you work for Frito-Lay's, you work for and I'll forget the name of it, but a ink cartridge company where you were
cartridge roll. Yep.
cartridge, the CEO there, the HMSHost in hospital. How did you go? Like you work in more traditional businesses, and then eventually you moved into, like in the last decade, a lot more into the hospitality world. What took you to the hospitality world? Was it more an opportunity, or was it just an area that was of interest to you, or how did you come to our world, if I could say?
From a hospital, well, yeah, it was more of an opportunity. I was fortunate at Pepsi. I got into sort of general management. I entered a track that was typically finance, and for whatever reason, they saw me more as a general manager. So they sent me into general manager roles. And I, for the most part, did turnarounds for them. My first unit, when I went to the Southeast area, it was a great unit, and that was certainly a business that was in steady state and was running fine. But then I went to Puerto Rico to help turn around the Caribbean division. I went to Australia to turn around the Australian division. So I got interested in turnarounds or transformations, because with very few exceptions, I've gone into businesses that were making money, but they were in pretty significant declines, and they needed growth restored, and they needed transformed. And so it was really the opportunity to go into HMSHost that brought me into the hospitality world. And that was it was a business that needed transformed. It had eroding margins. It had a slow growth rate, too slow, and so and then once you get into hospitality, it's hard not to get hooked. Right. I mean,
Yep.
although the last 18 months have been pretty brutal, but
Yeah,
but the fact that I've been in turnarounds has made the last 18 months, not as much of a challenge, I suppose, if you haven't, been in that environment before.
For sure, you've seen a lot of that before, and the steps that are
Yeah.
needed to make sure that you stay afloat and you're ahead of the curve when you can, or you react fast, right? That's the problem.
Right.
Many times people react too faster. I wasn't going there right away, but I'm kind of curious since we're on that track.
Yeah.
We talk to a community of restaurant operators. They can be independent, they can be chains. We talk to suppliers. We talk, like the podcast is aimed at the food service restaurant industry. Sure. Famously low margins and hard businesses to manage. They are steps, and I'm sure when you become an expert like you, where you're taken to different parts of the world to help turn around businesses, they are certain steps. And that's what I've learned. I did consulting for 10 years, and what I've learned is I used to want to do everything when I went in, and eventually I started work. There would be 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 things I'd work on that I knew would have the biggest impact quickly. Is that something that you've seen as well when you go into a business? And I just want to give some insight to people that may be listening to us, whether they're independent or they're scaling a brand. What are some of the things that are crucial to look at when you're in a bad spot, especially now coming out of this? Some people, I've read some stats that not as many restaurants have closed as they were expecting, but still a lot of people are hurting, and there's loans and there's stuff to repay. But what do you focus on when it's time to work on a turnaround?
Yeah, well, each one's been different, right? I mean, that's turnarounds are like snowflakes, and the issues driving them are different. And the first thing I would say is take time to try and develop your own understanding of what you think the issues are, right? So, because by definition, you come in and the board tells you, or the people tell you, oh, this is what's wrong with the business. A lot of times they don't know. That's why the business is struggling. So I've always listened, but then gone in and taken my own understanding and looked at tried to develop my own framework for why the business was struggling. In the case of Bar Louie, we didn't have a great guest experience, and I didn't think our food was. We had a world-class beverage program, right? So we're a spirit-led. The reason we call ourselves a gastrobar. Gastropubs is an industry term, but it's usually a beer-led liquor program that has food appropriate for a beer environment. We're a spirit-led. We're known for our martinis. We're known for our spirits, and we sell far more spirits than we do beer. And so Gastropub didn't fit us. It was gastrobar because of the spirit program. And we came in, we had a world-class spirit program, beverage program, but we didn't have food that matched it, in my opinion. And then we didn't really have a great brand identity. And so, when you think of that, first thing we had to do was fix the guest experience, because that's easiest. Just be nice, take care of people, get food out on time, right? That's you talk about changing the menu. That takes time, because you want to make sure you're doing it in the right way. You got to learn. You got to try and understand what your guests, want. So we went after the guest experience first. Then we went after, at the same time we were doing that, we started looking at the menu and playing around with the menu, and what we wanted to purposely delay on the marketing, because I didn't want to bring people into a bad guest experience or bad food. So we focused on, hey, fix the guest experience, because we can do that quickly. If you look at, we were monitoring social media sites. We were about a 3.6 out of 5-star rated business. We're now in the sort of 4.2s. So we made huge strides relatively quickly. And again, it was just focus. It's just, we're in the hospitality industry. Be hospitable. So we've made great progress. Now we're struggling a little bit right now, just that the whole industry is, because we've got staffing, issues, and we've got some things that are, sort of impacting our ability to continue to generate that 4. We've been as high as 4.3. And so, it's been, and then we rolled out a new menu in February of 2019, and our food sales have been terrific. And through the pandemic, we've done some different things. Like, we've continued to innovate the menu, which I don't think a lot of restaurants did. So we continued to introduce new items, because we believe, even if people are taking takeout and delivery, they still want to see new things on the menu. After 18 months, I know from my experience with, other units, other restaurants, the menu hasn't changed in 2 years. And, if you're going to be in, we just continue to think it's important to do that. And then we had to switch to digital. So we've been really working hard on digital marketing and reaching out directly to customers. And so it's been great. But yeah, we very methodically went guest experience, food, then marketing.
Which makes total sense, which I don't know for you and how you sold that internally, but from my experience, I spent a lot of time explaining to people, in consulting, people are like, oh, we're going to do more marketing. We're going to expand the menu. And I'm like, no, you need to focus on making sure the people that are coming now have a good experience. Yeah. Or just that word of mouth is going to bring in more business, and it's going to bring these people back more often, right? The famous bringing in new guests is a lot harder than bringing back somebody that's already having a great experience where you are. And I think that's an amazing point, where people always put marketing up top, but there's so much work to do. If you're on shaky ground, you're promoting and half,
well, that's it. You got to have, look, in a lot of cases, you get one bite at the apple. If you bring somebody new into the bar and it's a bad experience, they're not coming back, right? And God help you, it's harder to get somebody who's left you because the experience hasn't been good back in the bar. But if you bring in a second time and they don't have a great time, you'll never get them back. And so we really wanted to make sure we were ready for it when we brought them in. And the funny thing is, if you want to understand how your guest experience is, or if you want to understand how guests think about your food, talk to your servers, because they know. Yeah. If the menu's not right, if people don't like the food, the server knows, because they're the ones that hear it. Yeah. And so it was actually a much easier discussion with our teams, because they all knew the food, particularly the food. They all knew the food wasn't, at the same level as the beverage program now. And if you look at our bars now, even in the pandemic, as we've been able to open the bars that are open now, even though we still have some restrictions, whether they're state imposed or self-imposed, we're still operating with restrictions. Some of our bars have never sold the amount of food that they're selling right now, ever.
Tells you something,
with restrictions. Right? Yeah, it tells it exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's a really good point. Your servers are there, frontline. Servers, bartenders. They're talking to guests every day. They're getting the feedback. They know what's good, what doesn't work. Right? It's the first line of information you can get. A lot of times they may not know everything about the finances and the back end management, but your staff, you're on the floor. They know about your business. They know about what people like and don't like. And
yeah, the biggest thing you learn in turnarounds, and this is, my experience, is your field leadership and your field people. They are the tip of the spear. They're the ones who see it every day. They're the ones who understand what's going on in your business. And I think a lot of times headquarters gets disconnected from them. And you start making decisions without really understanding the impact on, them, or listening to them in terms of how the guests are reacting to it. And look, I spent 12 years at Frito-Lay. Frito-Lay was great about understanding the guest, the consumer. And so you learn that. It's really important to understand that and to learn that.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing these, because I think a lot of times, even if we go back to the beginning, I love what you said, is that every turnaround, I ask you if there's typical stuff you work on, but you said every turnaround is like a snowflake, and it's different. A lot of times people want to put a band-aid on a problem, and I think what guys like you, when you come in and you, is basically, let's find the root of the problem, fix it, and then we can jump, we can work on it. Because if you try to fix something where you're not on some solid ground, then you're just building on top of a shaky foundation, and eventually it's going to crumble again, or it's not going to sustain what you're trying to do, right?
Yeah, well, that's the analogy I use all the time. Like when you're going to expand a house, add a second floor, move it, the foundation's got to be right. And if the foundation's not right, the thing will eventually collapse in on itself. And so for us, it's always about, you got to fix the foundational problems, and you've got to fix them right. You can't, there's a lot of people that sort of fluff them up and then turn them, and it's just not my personality. It may take me longer to get a business turned around, but that's because I want it to last, and to me, the most, the stuff I'm most proud of, if you look at, the Caribbean division when I was, or the Australia Frito-Lay, they won more awards after I was gone, and to me, that's the ultimate success, is that, you get the business moved around, and it's, after you leave, you continue to see that momentum build. That to me is a turnaround done right, when it continues to just excel. Yeah.
It's it's a really good point there, that a lot of people, it took me a long time to learn that, but and I like the analogy of the garden, right? A lot of times people are trying to, whether they do the right thing or not to try to turn around their business, or to try to help it, they expect results right away, whether it's even in their leadership with their team, right? They're not perceived the way they want to be perceived. They're not getting the results. They're like, okay, I'm going to adapt how I am, and I'm going to try to be a better leader. And then 2 weeks later, they're angry because their entire team is not buying into that new, and that'll take 6 months, a year for people to, and the same thing with a turnaround. They're big boats, right? And you don't turn a large boat on a dime. So it takes a culture change, even what you're building with Bar Louie now, and the food and all that. I mean, that's over 6, 12, 18, 24 months that you'll see the results of the decisions that were made then, right? It takes a while for it to have an impact. So when you plant your garden in May, don't expect to be eating fruits at the end of May. You'll be eating them in, July, August, September, depending on the vegetable. But people expect the results to happen really quickly.
Well, look, in some cases it gets worse before it gets better, because you're breaking systems that for whatever reason are working, and you're trying to bring new systems in, and so a lot of times it gets worse, and I'm an old Navy guy, and, in an aircraft carrier, you throw the rudder over hard, because of the way the thing tilts and the wind effect, it actually goes in the opposite direction briefly before it goes, and so you just have to, and so there's, you see some units, some businesses try a turnaround, see it get a little bit worse, and immediately abandon it. And you got to have faith in your programs. You got to have belief in what you're trying to do. And you've got to be persistent, because it doesn't always get better first. You got to really kind of, our first attempt at a new menu failed, because it was, and what we learned was we went too far too fast, and our guests came in and were like, whoa, and so we learned, you got to sort of incrementalize your way there. If you look at where we are today, it's, it's a radically different menu, but it's taken us 4 or 5 smaller changes to get there.
And you also need to get the team buy-in, right? I mean, it's a change in culture, values, all that. So you need to you're impacting a lot of people. They're like, we're used to doing it this way. Why would we want to change it? So it takes time to sell those ideas as well, right? As a leader.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Where are we with Bar Louie now? You like you said, obviously pandemic. There's been changes. How many locations are you guys operating now, and what are your biggest markets?
So we have just over 70 units now. We had the unique, uh, uh, as if the pandemic wasn't bad enough, we were actually in bankruptcy prior to the pandemic. So we went from bankruptcy to pandemic. So for us, it's been an interesting journey. The business was fine. I mean, we went into bankruptcy because we just had some really bad real estate, and we had to, and some balance sheet issues because of the expansion. So we've got 49 great corporate units, and then the rest are franchise. The business is doing fine. Look, we, from our standpoint, from a restriction standpoint, it's been brutal, right? Because we've at one point we were 100% shut down to delivery and takeout only. But when we entered the pandemic, we didn't have a delivery business. I mean, we had zero delivery business because for us, pre-pandemic, the average dwell time of a guest for us was 2.5 hours because we're part bar, part restaurant. So, people were coming either beforehand and having a get together, gathering, and then eating, and then sort of hanging at the bar. And so we really wanted that. That's a huge advantage for us, that environment. So we weren't doing delivery. So we had to create a delivery business. We started making money again last fall and then got shut down over the holidays, so struggled again, but we've been profitable now for a while. Volumes have come back. Our biggest struggle right now is late night. So 20% of our business was coming after 10 o'clock at night, and we struggled to get that back. In some cases, it's because, we still have bars that are pretty heavily restricted, right? I mean, Michigan is still shut down to sort of limited hours and limited capacity in bar. That's supposed to change now, July 1st. And then we have staffing issues. So, for a long time, we didn't have a late night business. So it's tough when you lose 20% of your revenue just to start with, because you've lost late night. And that tended to be predominantly liquor, beer, wine, which is a higher margin. So for us, it's been a bit of a struggle, but we're actually, operating at sort of pre-pandemic profit levels for a whole lot of reasons. So we're fine. We're trying to get staff back up again. It's been a challenge for everybody, but we're making pretty decent progress. So our delivery business has been terrific, sustained us through the pandemic. We're very pleased with what we see from a delivery standpoint. And so, we're cautiously optimistic that we're coming out the other end of this.
It's been really hard for everybody, like you said. Just the staffing thing is that, I don't know if you guys felt it, but I'm in Montreal, Canada. In our market, like in Quebec and Canada here, there was a big shortage of labor before all this. Like, we started seeing chains like the KFC or McDonald's shutting down at certain times because they didn't have employees, they didn't have enough people. So, and right now you're going back, you're reopening, everybody's trying to go and grab people in the pool of talent. So it hasn't been obviously very painful for everybody, but there has been some positives for certain people in that, accelerated their online business or the takeout and all that. Have you seen some positives on your end where you revamped the menu? Maybe you went too fast at the beginning, a little bit of pushback from your guests. Now you put like that 15 months buffer where you're not really operating, or at least not normally. Do you think it helps you guys where you're doing that turnaround and you're trying to bring that level of service, new team members? Like it kind of forced a lot of people that had people that maybe were comfortable, that are not easy to bring change to or to evolve with you. Do you think it helps that push where you're trying to bring the business to a different place?
Yeah, I'll tell you what happened with us. When I doubt we're unique. In fact, I'm assuming every management team that was in hospitality, felt this way. The first couple weeks of the pandemic, you think it's the worst thing that ever happened to you, right? And you're almost taking some of the decisions, the shutdown decisions, personally. It was those first 3 or 4 weeks were just brutal because it didn't shut down all at once. It kind of rippled through the system, and it kind of went from 100 to 50% capacity. It just really, and then all of a sudden you're shut down. So, the first couple of weeks were just really depressing because you're trying to understand, you don't know what the other end's going to look like. And in our cases, it was a discussion I had with our head of IT. we had a, part of our turnaround, just because, historically we'd so underinvested in the bars and in IT. We had a very aggressive IT plan that was going to take us 2 to 3 years, I was having a discussion with the head of IT, and she said, we're not really doing anything right now because the bars are shut down. The load on the system's not that heavy. I think I can get this done in 3 months, 4 months.
Nice.
And I don't think it's even going to cost us money because I got all this time now because, we have, people, because we didn't really, we laid off the bar people. We kept a couple managers and cooks, on staff, because we had a takeout business and the delivery, developing delivery business. But we also wanted managers to stay on staff so we could stay in touch with the employees, right?
Yep.
So that we could keep weekly contact with them. So if no other reason, you can just find them when things reopen.
Yeah.
And so, we had this epiphany, after the discussion with the IT, our head of IT, I had this epiphany that it wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to us. It was the best thing that ever happened to us, because we were in the turnaround saying, geez, wouldn't it be nice if we could do this? Or, oh gosh, if we ever had the time and we could get this done. And all of a sudden we realized we have the time.
Yeah.
And so there isn't any part of this business that didn't get radically rethought, re-engineered, and redeployed. So for us, it's been we come out of this a completely different business.
Yeah.
In just about every way. And that's been, one of the reasons we are making money now at sort of 2019 levels is, we took a ton of costs out. We did all kinds of efficiency stuff. The remote working, has been so good, done so well. And we closed our headquarters building. Our lease was up. We said we're not going to renew. We're going to go to a remote G&A structure. It's been fine. It's been fine. So for us, it really was the best thing that ever happened to us, because it gave us the time to really radically rethink the business model. And so for us, it's been really helpful. It's been great. Great.
It makes a lot of sense. It's that opportunity to work on things you usually don't have time, right? I always pictured it like the classic Stephen Covey 7 Habits book, where there's that quadrant where in the hospitality business, we spend a lot of time in the urgent and important stuff, but you never get to the non-urgent important stuff, which is, core fundamental stuff that you want to bring to a different level. And I'm like, this is the time to do it. And somebody I run a.
It's like putting the thing in dry dock. The only way you can get at some of this stuff actually is to get a boat out of the water, and so for us, it was like, hey, we're in dry dock. This is the time you get all the really heavy stuff done, because when you're trying to run 70 bars, you don't have time. You just don't have time.
And you operate 12 months, and you're very close a few days out of the year.
7 days a week. We're 7 days a week, 12 months a year. You don't have time to do this stuff. Like we went in, for example, our database. 75% of the items in our database we didn't even sell anymore, but you don't have time to take them out, and so like we completely changed our database. It was a great period. We got so much done. I can't even tell you how proud I am of the team, because once it got started, people were coming to me with, hey, what if we did this, or hey, I was always thinking about doing that, and they really embraced it. And we're all over it, and it was a fun thing. It was a fun time. In some ways, it was a fun time. In other ways, it was not. But
it was hard, but it gave the ability to do a great reset on many things, and to set it up for the next reset. 10, 15 years.
Total reset for us.
Really cool. Thank you. I that's what I've seen too. Like we work with hundreds of restaurants, and that's what I've seen is the people who embraced it and said, you know what, this is my chance to kind of erase my mistakes and tweak what needs to be tweaked. So you said it before.
I was on industry calls, and you could see it. There were teams and leaders who were saying, I need the government to give me money. I need the landlord to give me concessions. I need, it was like, I need. And we were like, nobody's going to help you. We're gonna solve this by ourselves. If we get landlord concessions, great. Our landlords were wonderful. And to a landlord, they worked with us. They were supportive. We got things done. But we went into this with the idea that nobody's going to help us. We weren't eligible for the first round of PPP. we had to figure this out, and the team really embraced it, and it was really exciting to see.
Yeah, it's when you're always expecting. I mean, obviously, if you can get some help, it's good. But I mean, it starts with what can I do to help my business and structure it and make it better for sure. You said it once you step into hospitality, it's kind of hard to get out. We all get addicted. I've been addicted my whole life. I started when I was 14, and I never managed to get out. How are people different in hospitality than in traditional businesses, from what you've seen?
Oh, I don't think they are.
They're not?
No, I don't think they are. I mean, the job's different. I mean, in some ways they're more dedicated. I mean, you run a kitchen till 2 a.m. You've got 3 p.m. 3 a.m. closings. That's a level of dedication that you don't necessarily have when you're running a plant that closes at 6 p.m. But I think they're at a personal level. They want to be appreciated. They want to be recognized. They want to know that there's development opportunities. I mean, I think on many levels it's the same. It's just the challenges are a little bit different.
Yeah. You've been managing large businesses for a long time. I'm sure you obviously learned tremendously through all that. What would you say to a young Tom from 25 years ago? What would be some of any tips you'd give yourself to try to make a few things more simple?
Well, yeah. Look, I tell it to my kids. I tell it to junior people in the firm. Right. One is, in the short term, life is always unfair. Right. You can always find somebody who's making more money than you do, has a nicer car than you do, lives in a nicer place than you do. And so if you focus on the short term, you will always be unhappy. But in the long run, if you focus on what's right, if you do your job and focus on your job, it all works out. Right. And so to me, there's this, you got to quit worrying about the short-term stuff, because it's not that hard to find injustice. It's just, you just look out and you see it. I mean, it's just, and so for me, it's forget about the short term, worry about doing the long-term stuff, worrying about do everything right. In the long run, it's going to work itself out. So that's the first one. And the second one is, you have to be resilient. I can't tell you how many times we tried stuff where the first time it failed, the second time it failed, the third time it failed, and the fourth time it worked. But you can't, if you really, really, really believe it's the right thing to do, don't quit the first time you try something and it doesn't work. Keep focusing on it. Doesn't mean do the same thing over and over again. Try to figure out why it failed, modify it, adjust it, change it, but keep going at it, and eventually you'll solve it. But you can't, and it's funny, you see it more and more. Again, I came out of a military environment. When you're told to take the hill, you take the hill, and you don't stop until you're on top of the hill. You don't go back down and go, "Hey, they were shooting at us." That's not the way it works. And you see a lot of people now that sort of come back and go, "Yeah, I tried that, didn't work." It's like, well, okay, so what else did once you figured out, and it's that resiliency that you got to learn as well. I mean, life is hard, and again, there's a great line from one of the movies. We Were Soldiers Once and Young, where he's coaching the junior officers, and he says, 3 strikes and you are not out. In life, 3 strikes and you are not out. And just keep going at it, and it's that. I think those are the 2 things.
That's amazing. Great points, great advice. That's what it took me also a long time to learn, is that I used to, it's funny because there are 2 points. I used to feel like that 15, 20 years ago, where I saw people that I felt were maybe not as smart as me, or, like maybe it was condescending, but I'm like, man, I'm smarter than them and they have a successful business. Why don't I have that? And then I realized that, they worked harder and they just kept at it. Right. And I'd heard a line that said, the world is full of very smart people that have underachieved. Right. Like I love the resiliency in the fact that, there are injustices, but if you work at it and you're willing to give it time and to try, and every failure takes you closer to a success, to a win, if you learn, obviously, in that process, like you said.
Yeah.
If what's the quote? If like, I don't know what it is, but the craziness is basically trying to do the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.
That's right. The definition of crazy is doing
crazy
the
is
expecting a different, doing the same thing over and over and expecting
a different results. But I love that. That's it. My life in the last 10, 15 years has changed so much because I keep at it and I stay at it and I learn from it. And that, I think that's such great advice. And you see it all the time. People that are resilient, that are flexible, that are, they get their way and eventually they get their dues. The classic, an overnight success is 10 years of work, right? Well, that's kind of,
right.
Yeah.
Or the other quote from, one of the golfers, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some of that where you just, and you just, or the Colonel Sanders story, right, where the guy failed 50 times and finally came up with KFC when he was like in his 70s or something crazy, Yeah. So those are the things that I tend to talk to folks about, my own kids about.
That's really good stuff for sure. You talked about when you're obviously talking to your kids or some younger managers or some people going into management and all that. How do you help people that are, I don't know if you call them middle managers, or in the hospitality? To me, it's a lot of times it's the people that were in service or in the kitchen that, there's a lot of growth from within in our industry, right? You're a dishwasher, you become a cook, you become a sous chef and a chef, or you're a hostess, you become a server, a bartender. And then eventually a lot of these people, they that want to stick in our business and they want to do a career out of it, they go into management. And it's so hard. Like, that's the switch from employee to manager is one of the ones I've seen where people struggle the most. And maybe you've seen the same thing going up in the C-suite and in different roles. But how do you help people to transition? A lot of times there's the imposter syndrome. There's how am I perceived, by the team? But how do you help people kind of grow into leadership roles? Because sometimes the ambition and aspiration is not the same as what it is when they get into those shoes. I've been there. I fell into the shoes and I'm like, man, this is not what I thought it was going to be like when I got into a manager or leadership role.
Oh yeah, it's terribly difficult, right? Because the challenge changes. So when you're coming up through the ranks, it's about personal achievement, and I want to be the best line cook, or I want to be the best server, and it's all about me and my performance. When you become a manager, it's no longer about you, it's about your team.
Yeah.
And you win because the team succeeds. And that's a huge change. And it becomes about, it's no longer self-motivation, it's team motivation. It's, and not everybody's motivated in the same way. We at Bar Louie, one of the problems we had that we worked really hard to develop is, I want to have, and the challenge to HR is, when somebody comes in as a dishwasher or a part-time server, they need to know the career path all the way up to my job. Like, if you have some, buddy coming in, wants to be a part-time server, but thinks at some point they want to be CEO of Bar Louie, they need to know how they're going to get there. And there needs to be a logic to how you do that. And so we created that. And candidly, we lost a little bit of it in COVID. Right? Because all of a sudden you go to no employees, you come back. Yeah. We're just trying to bring people back in. So that discussion about how you move through the ranks and how you advance, we kind of lost, and we're in the process of re-engaging on that right now. We've done a lot of things where we create leadership councils. So we're going to be creating something right now with our kitchen managers, where we take, those kitchen managers that represent the best of that great group, or who have aspirations to be general managers, to start participating in, some of the work around what's going on in the kitchens and menu changes and stuff. We've created programs around, we call them our executive general managers, where they're the best of the best that we think want to go in, or that we think have the possibility of going into a district manager role. And so we try to create, opportunities for them to start experiencing that, the challenge of trying to manage different teams. In some cases, like in 2019 with our executive general manager programs, we tended to partner them with new general managers so that they could learn and, work. So the new general manager gets the benefit their experiences and and their experience at Bar Louie, and they get that first taste of trying to motivate another general manager from a performance standpoint. So we try to give them real world experience. We obviously talk to them and coach them and do some other things as well, but we're trying to figure out ways to give them real world experiences so that they can see that they want to do it, because it's different work. And a lot of times you want the title and then you get in there and you go, God, I hate this, and so we want to make sure that we think they've got the growth and the potential. We want to make sure that they've got the desire to change, to do what they need to do to be successful in that new way.
Yeah. Very good. It's kind of easing them into that role and giving them a taste for it, because when you're in many places, you're kind of parachuted down, or what do you say, baptism by fire. It's like, there you go, here are the keys, and
one
of
the things we've stopped. Look, before I got here, one of the things they were famous for is they were hiring general managers, and they were saying, we're going to give you 6 weeks of training, and we're going to really sort of put you in with senior people. You're working in another bar, and we're going to give you 6 weeks. And then like day 3, they, sorry, we don't have time to wait. We need you in the bar, and you're going right away. And it was a disaster, And so we've been very methodical about it. We've said, if it's 6 weeks training, you get 6 weeks training. We even went to the point, we took all the general managers who had shortcutted training. Some of them had been in the bar already a year. We pulled them out and completed the training. And said, I'm going to pull you out. You're going back to your bar, obviously, but I'm pulling you out right now so that you get into headquarters and complete your training. So we're very methodical about it, because I mean, what it's like. I'm sure you've experienced. You bring somebody in and you shortcut the training and they fail, it causes you far more problems, and it's a lot longer to solve than if you'd have just kept the position open for a couple of weeks and finished the training. And so we've been very, very methodical about do not shortcut training. It causes more problems in the long run.
People don't have the tools. And not only that, it affects, you have to refill the position, but it probably affects the entire team, because they have a GM that's not as competent as they could be. It probably causes a lot of other problems with the team.
Absolutely. It causes team problems. And also, by the way, it causes reputational problems. So nobody wants to come work for you because they know you're not going to train them. You're just going to throw them into the wolves, as it were. And so, I mean, it's really critical that we bring in the right people, we train them, and we complete the training before we turn them loose.
For sure. I love what you're saying there. And I think, for people listening, the training, making sure that the people have all the tools and the knowledge that they need, it affects, again, not only themselves, how they feel. A lot of times you'll get turnover because people don't feel like they're successful, or they don't like it, or they've been, parachuted in there. It affects the team. It affects the results of the business, makes you, like you said, reputation wise, a less attractive employer. That's one thing I was talking to so many people even before the pandemic is, everybody's complaining that they're short staff and there's a lack. Yeah, agreed, it's there, and it's hard to get resumes and it's hard to get people. But would you work for yourself? Right? Ask yourself that to start. Like, would you want to go and work for yourself? Are you a place where it's fun to work, where people can grow, where they're treated like human beings and all that? So I think that's really good that people undervalue the importance of that training and making sure people have all the right tools.
Right.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. Obviously, you've worked in many places over the world. You've done many different leadership roles. You've probably influenced a ton of people and had a huge impact on many people. Who would be 2-3 people that had an influence on you and help mold you into the Tom that you are today?
Well, it starts with your parents. I was fortunate to have, wonderful parents, terrific parents. Each played a different role. Like your mother plays a different role than your father, but I was fortunate that they were, both great role models, and I look up to. From a business perspective, I would say the guy that had the biggest influence for me when I went to PepsiCo, I actually started on the chairman of the board staff, and so I was the strategic planning manager on the corporate strategy staff, looking at international snack foods. And so that was when Wayne Calloway was the chairman of the board. He was, I think the best senior executive, CEO, chairman I've ever seen. And I loved that man. And he was just a terrific, and I learned a lot from him. The humility, the care for people. I never saw him. I was in a lot of presentations because I presented to him twice a month. So I was around him quite a bit. I never saw him not thank someone for their presentation, even if he thought it was complete garbage. And he had a very subtle way of complimenting you that when you went back into the room, you'd realize he actually thought I was dead wrong on that issue. But he had such a nice way of delivering it that you were like, you felt good. And then after you were thinking about it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I missed that. Or, I got to rethink that. He had this wonderful way about him that was just so powerful. And a lot of lessons I've learned from him. I mean, he used to always say, you can give people a difficult assignment or you can tell them what to do, but you can't do both. So, and so he was, like when they sent me down to turn around Puerto Rico, he was like, good luck. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You got to go figure it out. You keep me informed. And, the minute I start telling you what to do, we've lost. And so he was great about that. He was just a great guy. And I use his role model a lot. It was a real blessing to have a chance to work with him.
Very cool. I think it's a trait of many leaders, right? To have the ability to, the classic where, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, there's a lot of put down and even in raising kids and all that, but the ability to make people feel good, even in a situation where you have to tell them, I learned that from a tremendous leader and very influential person in my life, but even, doing performance reviews and stuff like that, right? How you set it up and how so the goal is for the feedback to go through, right? Do you want to be right, or do you want to have an impact on the person in front of you? And in the way that you share whatever feedback you have to give, whether it's positive or whether it's opportunities, has such a difference in how people feel.
You learn that. You learn that. I went to the Naval Academy. It's the you praise in public and you reprimand in private. And it's that. Or there's that Dan Fogelberg song, where he talks about the thundering velvet hand. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. It's the and so. Yeah, but my dad had a thundering velvet hand. He was, when you did something wrong, you knew it. And you were worried about facing him when you had done something stupid. But he wasn't physical. You didn't want to disappoint him. You just didn't want to disappoint him. And he let you know when you were when he was disappointed, and you let you know when he was proud of you. And it was just, it's that simple, right? We tend to make it harder than it is. But it's, sometimes it's the simplicity of that style that you get lost on. You have a tendency, I think people have a tendency to overthink it.
For sure. And I don't know if you've seen that in your leadership. One thing that helped me grow as a leader a lot and helping my teams and people is many people they don't necessarily want to do that, but they tend to attack the person instead of the wanted result, or that you were saying that your dad would be disappointed about, I don't know, a bad result in school, or you didn't give your full effort into something, then he expected you to push further, but when I started focusing a lot more on, I'm, not satisfied with the result of this task, project, whatever it is. It's not about you, right? Many people, when you attack the person, then they get defensive and they don't necessarily hear what's going on, instead of focusing on it's the result that's expected, and let's focus together. I always see it when I coach somebody that we're side by side, right? People see it as a confrontation, but I see it as we're side by side looking at the issue or the problem, and maybe we didn't take the best game plan to get there, but let's tweak that together. And that's what you're saying about your chairman at Pepsi as well, right? If I tell you what to do, I trust that you'll be within certain boundaries to make whatever turnaround we need, right?
That's and it's the hardest thing for new managers and new CEOs and people when I bring in the C-suite. You got to be comfortable enough to let your team fail, because they will fail, and particularly when you ask them to do things, they're going to fail, and your job is to be the guardrails on the highway. Like I'll only intervene if I think it's going to cause real disruptions to the business, or if
Yeah.
they're really going down a path that's going to cause problems. But when they, and like I find with my own style, I try not to over edit presentations. Like if that's how they want to present it and I'm checking it because it's going to go to the board or whatever, I try not to over edit it. I just want to make sure the message is clear. And
Yeah.
if they're going to present it in a different way, that's okay. You know, and new managers tend to try to micromanage all that stuff, and your people don't grow, you know. And if, like, I have a tendency of over editing PowerPoint. So you know what? I learned it myself. And if I'm going to give a PowerPoint presentation, I just do it myself because I feel bad calling people and saying, you know, move it a quarter
Change
of an
it.
inch this way, or, you know, like font this one,
I
bold
don't like
this
the
one,
color.
cut this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I just learned PowerPoint
Yeah.
because, you know, it's just easier. And I feel bad when I'm sort of, and you, but that's the hardest thing is you got to look, sometimes people come to you and they have these crazy ideas and you go, okay, it's not going to blow up the business. If you think that's going to be the best way to go, let's see what happens. And if it fails, it fails, you know, and we don't hold them accountable. You know, honest effort failures are, businesses need that. That's how you push the envelope. That's how you push the boundaries, you know.
Yeah.
It's the dishonest ones that you, or the repetitive ones that you got to worry about. You start making the same mistake 3 or 4 times. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, wait a minute, something's going
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
I love your analogy of you're the guardrail, right?
Yeah.
My job is to make sure you stay on the road, so you don't, total the car, but you
That's
can
it.
drive, you can make mistakes, you can. And I was telling you about a leader that impacted me, and she always said, I don't know, because I was asking her, she's like, just do your thing. I trust you. Like, to me, the perfect answer is here, but in between that, it's not a bad answer. And over here, you burn the restaurant down, and over here, somebody may die. But
Yeah.
I know you won't be outside of those boundaries. And if you are, I'll be there to make sure. And like you said, I'll be your guardrail to make sure that
Yeah,
happens.
I
And
had when I was at Cartridge World, we had a ink supplier in Germany, and you know I love the guy dearly, and he was very supportive of the business. But you know, one day he told me, he said, "I'm a businessman, which means 2 + 2 is somewhere between 3 and 5." And you know, and it's like you listen to that, and you go, I get that. You know, on one hand, it's funny, but it's like, yeah, no, that's right. And so you're right. I very much see myself as the guardrails,
yeah,
and it's only if I think it's gonna, you know, really blow up
yeah,
will I, you know, sort of intervene.
yeah,
Otherwise, if they want to push the envelope, try something great, you know, so let's do it. We'll watch it carefully and monitor it,
yeah.
you know, and it's not the I told you so. If it didn't work, it didn't work. You know, we move on. What do we do about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'd much rather try to be the guardrail than to push a rope, right? If your people
Yeah.
don't want to do anything, like that gets very, very frustrating, and I'd much rather be able to help people keep on the right path. This has been a really interesting conversation, Tom. I really appreciate it. Time flies. I'd love to
Yeah.
throw a couple of rapid fire questions your way because we learned a little bit
Okay.
about you at the beginning,
See
and
what
I
we.
think I could talk to you all day because I think some really, really amazing nuggets in here. Obviously, gastrobar, so great beverage program. Do you enjoy a beverage yourself once in a while?
I do.
Yeah,
Kettle One on the rocks.
Kettle One. That was going to be a question. What do you like? Kettle One on the rocks. I love that. The best trip you've ever taken?
Oh, geez. Well, the biggest bucket list was the Great Wall of China.
Wow, that must be outstanding to see for sure.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
You're on a desert island. You can bring one record of music. What would it be?
Bee Gees' Greatest Hit, Volume 1.
Love that. If you see over here, Dave Grohl right there as a new band called the DGs, that they're doing a cover. They're doing 4 covers of the Bee Gees and then some live songs. It's coming out next month, and I can't wait to hear. I heard one of the songs that it's pretty cool, but
Yeah,
they're doing like a
there's that
disco album.
documentary on them, right? There's that
Yeah,
documentary on them that's on, I think, HBO. It's
yeah,
terrific if you haven't seen it.
yeah.
If you, because there's an interesting line. It's the most moving line of the whole thing. Have you seen it? It's called, I think, How Do You Mend a Broken Heart? It's the story of the Bee Gees.
No, I'd love to see
But
it though because I've seen many other shows and really appreciate what they do. So
it's a documentary. It takes it from beginning to end, but it's very interesting because, you know, there's only one left now, right? Barry's the
yeah,
only one left, and
yeah,
he was talking about at the end of the thing about how much he missed his brothers, and he said even though they're dead, you know, I mean, it was all, and he said, I would take all the awards we've ever one and give them all back just to have another day with them.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like at the end, it's the people that matter. It's
Of
not,
course.
the accomplishments are great, but I miss my brothers. And it was a really moving, it was an interesting, it was a really moving
Yeah.
statement by him.
I'll definitely watch that. I mean, obviously you can guess I'm big into music, but
Yeah,
I can
gather,
imagine
yeah.
from their talent, their ability to sing their harmonies together. I'm not a great musician or great singer, but I play with some really good people. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you play music or if you ever played, but singing harmonies with somebody, and when it's more than even one person, there's something that connects your souls together when you do that. That's really special. And
well, they say
I can only imagine
or
with
even
your brothers, right?
like when you're in the same family, you harmonize in a way that you just can't if you're, because their inspiration was the Mills Brothers. So like one of my dad's things was, he was into music, but only his music. So I grew up listening to 40s and 50s, and the Mills Brothers had a sound you just can't hear. I mean, it was the family thing. And he references the Mills Brothers that, we had this ability to harmonize because we were brothers that you just can't replicate.
Yeah. Yeah, great band.
Sorry,
for sure.
This hasn't been rapid fire.
No, it's fine, but it's sometimes they're so interesting that you just need to go where you need to go. So, are you reading anything now?
Yeah, I'm reading a book on James Baker.
Okay, very cool. Former, God,
he was
I'm trying to remember
just about everything, right?
Everything, right?
Treasury Secretary, Secretary of State, President.
I knew Secretary of State. Yeah. If you could have dinner with anyone, who would that be?
Jesus Christ.
Nice. Yeah, that would be an interesting story for sure. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And what would be 3 words that best describe Tom Fricke?
Are they my words or someone else's?
Your pick.
I would say husband, father, and business executive.
Tom, it has been a pleasure to have this discussion with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me on Table 21. You
appreciate it, Christopher. Thank you. Sorry about being a little late, but
no problem. Tech problems happen all the time, so it's fine.
Yeah,
not an issue there. I think you're well on your way. Obviously, you're really good at turnarounds. Well on your way to bring Bar Louie to where you the vision is and all that. Congratulations on all the hard work, and the same thing for your entire team. I can't wait for the border to reopen so I can go visit a Bar Louie myself in the U.S. because I've missed traveling a lot. But it's been a real pleasure to have you on.
I grew up, my summers in Halliburton, Ontario, is where I went every summer as a kid. So I look forward to visiting Canada again.
That's amazing. Thanks for your time, and we'll cross paths down the road. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Christopher. Take care.
Bye. Bye.